So, I'm back home for a little bit while reading week is happening at university. Since I'm back home, I have time to make a scripted, edited video. Of course, I'll be going back to residence on university next week. My next video after this one will most definitely be another commentary video. Don't expect another edited, scripted video until December when I'm home again for Christmas break, and I can make the top 10 best and worst hit songs of 2022 videos. So not long ago, I made a video titled Fan Projects vs. Intellectual Property Laws. In that video, I explained that fan projects remaking or redoing and or adding some aspect of an already existing piece of media without permission from the original owner is a violation of intellectual property law, and that from a legal standpoint, the original companies have every right to take down or block them. That video was mainly centered around the SpongeBob SquarePants movie Rehydrated getting temporarily blocked from YouTube, which was the main motivator for me making that video. Well, that getting lambasted on Twitter for bootlicking for simply pointing these facts out. In that video, I briefly brought up how, technically, fan art is a violation of IP law too. I decided to revisit this topic again and focus on what I said about fan art. There's a lot of fan artists who might not realize that they're technically breaking the law. Let me explain. Companies own the rights to their respective IPs. Technically, anything that uses another company's IP in any way without permission, unless it's clearly a parody, is illegal. Do you own the rights to that character you drew and posted online? No, you don't. And you clearly didn't ask for the company's permission before making it. It's also clearly not a parody or protected by fair use in any way. You broke IP laws when you distributed that drawing, which means that technically speaking, you're a criminal. I know that might sound shocking, but if you think about it, it's true. Any person who's ever drawn and posted fan art online without permission is a criminal. If they really wanted to, some animation studio could decide at any time to track down and take legal action against every single person who's ever drawn a character from one of their shows and posted online. Of course, they're probably not going to ever do that. That would just be a huge waste of time and money, and be a huge blow to their reputation. But technically speaking, they absolutely could do that. It's highly unlikely, but technically possible. Same goes with using characters as your profile pictures, like I do with Norbert of the Angry Beavers. I didn't get permission from Nickelodeon or Viacom CBS to use their IP protected characters as my profile picture. By using Norbert as my profile picture and adopting the nickname of Norbert online, I'm violating intellectual property law, which means that I'm a criminal. Again though, Nickelodeon's probably not going to do anything about that. After all, it's not hurting anyone, and going after some nobody online for using a character as his profile picture just seems petty and greedy. It's the same reason why record labels normally don't try to track down and take legal action against people who download music. It's technically illegal, but going after people who do that just isn't worth it, so they don't. It's not really much of a law if it's not really being enforced, so you can pretty much get away with it. Now, of course, if you're only drawing IP-protected characters in your own sketchbook or for art class or something, you're probably legally safe because, 1, you're not actually distributing those drawings, and 2, how the heck would the original studio know that you did that? Once you actually distribute those drawings though, either for free by posting it online, or for money by charging people for it, that's when it really becomes illegal. Speaking of charging people for drawings, that's when things get even more interesting. The legal issue of selling artwork of IP-protected characters isn't just limited to the internet, it can even be an issue in real life as well. At some conventions, there are rules limiting or preventing artists from selling fan art. Selling a drawing you made of your favorite superhero at Comic-Con could land you in legal trouble since you don't own the IP rights to it. If you were to draw your own Spider-Man comic and sell it at a comic convention, that would 100% be illegal. Marvel would absolutely be in the right to take legal action against you. Here's a lawyer at 2012 Comic-Con who discusses this very topic.
So the law is a really sort of complex thing. And the core of the law that applies to fan art is called intellectual property law, IP law. And IP law is pretty counterintuitive. And I'll explain why in a second. You get these exclusive rights in copyright, and one of them is the right to make a copy, one is to distribute, and one is derivative works. Those are the ones relevant to people who are engaged in fan art. And copying doesn't just mean tracing or duplicating with a photocopying machine. It also means replicating the character. So it means doing a different version of the character. Having the character, in different kinds of clothes, in different kinds of settings, doing different kinds of things, can implicate the right to copy under the copyright law. Distribution is by any means, for any reason, in any size, any way, on the internet, not on the internet, in a movie theater, not in a movie theater, on a teeny little piece of paper that you pass to someone in the classroom, that's technically distribution under the copyright law. And a derivative work means making something based upon the copyrighted work or integrating the copyrighted work. And that is an exclusive right of the owner of the copyrighted work. A play, a book, a movie, a drawing, a comic, a sculpture, a costume, any of these things based upon the work implicates the copyright. This cosplay stuff implicates the copyright in a copyrighted character because it's a derivative work based upon the character. And that's the exclusive right of the copyright owner. And it doesn't matter whether you do it for profit or whether you do it for free under the copyright law. Makes absolutely no difference in terms of it being an infringement of copyright.
I'm sure some of you might be thinking, wow, so drawing a cartoon character on paper and passing the piece of paper to a friend is copyright infringement? Cosplaying as a fictional character at Comic-Con is copyright infringement? Indeed it is, according to that guy, copyright lawyer Josh Waddles. Giving your drawing of a cartoon character to someone else technically counts as distribution, which therefore makes it illegal. I bet you never knew copyright and IP laws were that strict, did you? I sure didn't before I saw that video. I'll leave a link to the video in the description below. I'd really recommend you watch the whole thing, it's actually pretty interesting. So yeah, next time you go to Comic-Con, be careful. If you give someone else your drawing of a cartoon or comic book character, or dress up as your favorite superhero, you're technically breaking the law. Only draw characters that you yourself created to be legally safe. Actually, and this is just speculation, I could be totally wrong on this, but it's not even a guarantee that creators of shows can even legally distribute drawings of their own characters outside of making their show. If Craig McCracken were to post his own drawing of the Powerpuff Girls on Twitter, or if CH Greenblatt were to sell drawings of Chowder or Harvey Beaks at some convention, or if Dan Milano were to post a video of him drawing High Five and Miko on YouTube, they could be breaking IP laws. Just because it's their show doesn't mean they can distribute drawings of their own characters in every context. The original networks own their shows, not them, and that includes the IP for those characters. By distributing pictures of those characters without the network's approval, they could technically be breaking the law. I don't know, I could be wrong on that. Maybe the contracts that they signed with the networks gave the permission to distribute drawings of those characters outside of maybe the actual show since they're the creators, but still, I don't know for sure what was in those contracts. I'm not going to make any assumptions one way or the other. I mentioned earlier that anything that uses characters you don't own without permission violates IP laws. Not just fan art, but fan animations and fan fiction are also a violation of IP laws. Just like with fan art, studios could, at any time, sue every single person who's ever written fan fiction of their favorite show on fanfiction.net. Just because it's only in written form and not visual doesn't mean it doesn't break IP laws. The only exception is if it can be found to be a parody, which is protected by fair use. But writing your own episode of your favorite show is definitely legal and absolutely not a parody. Of those three things I mentioned, fan art, fan animation, and fan fiction, fan animation is the one most likely to be shut down, probably because it's the closest thing that comes to emulating the original, given that it uses both video and audio, just like an episode of the original show. But all three are a violation of IP laws. There's also a couple more instances I want to bring up related to this topic. You know how Butch Hartman traces other people's fan art for his commissions? Well, technically speaking, it could be argued that the real crime here isn't that he traced another artist's work, but that he drew and posted a character that he doesn't own the IP rights to. Plus, like I mentioned before, paid commissions for said art adds another layer of illegality to him drawing it. Technically speaking, the company that owns Attack on Titan or Urusei Sora could have sued Butch Hartman for posting and charging for a drawing of a character that he didn't own the rights to, and they could have also sued the fan artists who posted the art that he traced. Neither Butch Hartman nor the original artist had the right to post drawings of those characters. From an IP law standpoint, they were both equally in the wrong. Well, maybe Butch more so due to charging money for the drawing, but my point is, they're both technically criminals for that, as if Butch wasn't a criminal already. Here's another example. As many of you in the cartoon community might remember, 3 years ago, there was an incident where Nickelodeon stole a fan-drawn SpongeBob background using their promo for LEGO City Adventures.
There's a new show on the block.
They literally took a SpongeBob background fan art posted on DeviantArt in 2016, put in one of their promos in 2019 without the artist's permission or knowledge, and even photoshopped a signature on the corner. As you can imagine, Matt Salvador, the original artist, wasn't pleased, and a lot of people were angry at Nickelodeon for being thieves. But let me ask you a question. From a legal standpoint, who was really in the wrong here? I know from a moral standpoint, the vast majority of people would side with Matt and say that Nickelodeon was in the wrong, but from a legal standpoint, there is an argument to be made that Matt is the one in the wrong. Hear me out. He drew a SpongeBob background. SpongeBob is a show whose IP is owned by Nickelodeon. Technically, distributing fan art in any way, like posting on DeviantArt, is a violation of IP law. From a legal standpoint, it could be argued that Matt was truly the one in the wrong because he didn't have the legal right to draw that background in the first place. Doing so was violating Nickelodeon's intellectual property. Now, you could still argue that even if Matt was legally in the wrong, two wrongs don't make it right and that Nickelodeon still shouldn't have used the fan art on their promo. Well, a further argument can be made that actually, Nickelodeon did have the right to use it. Nickelodeon owns the IP, and they do technically own everything based on their IP, so an argument can be made that they own all fan artists at IP. Therefore, they own that fan-drawn background, not Matt, and thus had the legal right to use in their promo. Now, let me just clarify here that this is not what I personally agree with. I absolutely think that Nickelodeon was one more in the wrong here. I'm just saying that Nickelodeon could argue this would be 100% correct legally speaking. I guarantee you that if this had gone to court, this is exactly what Nickelodeon's lawyers would have argued. And regardless of who you think was more in the wrong, let's be clear, Nickelodeon would win that lawsuit easily. They're a multi-million-dollar company. To paraphrase some dialogue from the iCarly episode I Take on Dingo, they have the money, lawyers, and therefore the power to steal anything they want. They could easily win that lawsuit against Matt by arguing what I just said, and then countersue him for violating their IP by drawing the background in the first place, and win that lawsuit too. It's scummy, but it's legal. Now, as for the similar incident that happened later that year, where a poster of Pooh's Adventures of the SpongeBob SquarePants movie was shown in an episode of The Substitute instead of the actual SpongeBob SquarePants movie poster, that's likely a slightly different story. In that case, Nickelodeon and the creators of the fan edit poster were likely both legally in the wrong. Nickelodeon could have sued the fan editors for IP infringement of SpongeBob and Avatar: The Last Airbender, and the studios who own all the other characters could have sued both Nickelodeon and the fan editors for IP infringement of their characters. The latter for putting them in that poster in the first place, and the former for accidentally putting the said poster in one of their shows. Although this is probably a case where both copyright and IP law applies, given that the original SpongeBob SquarePants movie poster itself is likely protected by copyright. Copyright law isn't the same thing as IP law. Now, why am I telling you all of this? Am I sucking up to corporations whenever they steal fan art anyway? Am I trying to shame fan artists? Am I putting myself on a moral high ground because I've never really done fan art before? No. Honestly, I'm just as guilty of breaking IP laws as any fan artist. I mentioned this earlier and in the previous video, but calling myself Norbert online and using a picture of him as my profile picture on social media is also a violation of IP laws. Nickelodeon owns rights to the character of Norbert, not me. Not only that, but I used Norbert in most of my video thumbnails. In this video's thumbnail alone, Nickelodeon could sue me for using Norbert, Matt's SpongeBob background, and a screenshot of their promo using said background. And the studio who owns Attack on Titan could also sue me for using both Butch Hartman's trace commission of Mikasa Ackerman, as well as the original fan art. Nickelodeon could also sue me for making that 30th anniversary Nicktoons picture full of characters that they own all the IP rights to. I'll say it aloud, I'm a criminal. I break IP laws and I continue to do so despite knowing it's illegal. And I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep using Norbert in my video thumbnails and the watermark in the corner and keep calling myself Norbert Online. I thought I'd make a video about this because I think this is kind of an interesting topic. Posting fan art or using characters in videos and profile pictures is one of those things you don't really feel like a criminal for doing, but it is technically illegal. However, knowing it's illegal doesn't stop you. People who pirate and download music know that what they do is illegal, but they keep on doing it. They're not deterred, and neither am I. In fact, an argument can be made that networks do, at least de facto, give fans permission to draw and post fan art. They often post fan art on their official social media pages with credit to the original artist. The fact that they post fan art drawn by fans of their shows with credit implies that they like the fan art and are okay with it existing. It's entirely up to them what people can and can't do with their IPs, but unless they do specifically give permission, drawing fan art and distributing it in any way can, practically speaking, land you in legal trouble. The probability is tiny, but it's not zero. Plus, unlike downloading music, fan art doesn't really cause any loss of revenue for the original company. Well, unless you're selling it like I mentioned before. Fan art can actually bring people's attention to the show and make people more interested in checking it out. Once again, this is more so an issue with intellectual property, not copyright. Calling myself Norbert Online and using him in my thumbnails and profile picture also isn't really harming Nickelodeon either, so even though they could absolutely sue me for using Norbert this way, getting struck by lightning is far more likely to happen to me. But what do you think of this topic? Should distributing fan art be legal? Do IP laws need reforming? Did I make you feel paranoid about studios suing you anytime for fan art you drew? Let me know in the comments. On that last one, don't be paranoid. The police aren't going to knock on your door and arrest you for drawing fan art or using images from your cartoons as your profile picture. Oh, hang on a second, let me get that. Oh, good afternoon, officer. May I help you?
Are you Simeon Davenport?
Yes, officer.
You're under arrest
What? For what?
for using IP-protected characters in your video thumbnails and profile pictures.
What? But you can't do that!
I most certainly can. You're going to court.
No, please, this is ridiculous! I can't go to jail for this!
Tell it to the judge.
Let me go! I'll see you guys later.
Come here!
Ah!